Hello sweet friends, and welcome to the Rebookery channel. Today I am going to do a review of these Arteza Gouache opaque watercolor paints. So Arteza contacted me before Christmas, around Thanksgiving, and asked if I would be willing to try out some of their supplies and do a video review. And I said yes, and so these were one of the things that I had chosen because I was just very, very curious about these. So they are a tube of paint, so I'll show you. They come in tubes. These are paints that are pigmented, they are water-based, and people typically talk about these as these are an opaque or a thicker type of a watercolor. So I'm not very good at like knowing the fineries of watercolors and things like that because I am not a professional watercolorist, but I do know what I like to use and what works well for me in my journals, which I feel like if you're watching my channel, most of you guys are in that same boat. So I'm not an expert, but I will share with you what I have learned. When you get this is the box of 60. It will come with all of the paints right here. It'll list them right here, and then it lists them again. I thought it listed them again on the side. Yep, it lists them, whoops, again on the back. So the reason why that is important is because this shows you there's a code here. It gives you the name, it gives you the number, it tells you how light fast it is. It also tells you if its opacity, and so there's like a code and a key. So if you are a person who is interested in doing professional painting or some things that you like to hang up or would be out in the sun other than just in your journals, these would probably be very, very helpful to you, sorry. And then there's a key at the bottom so you know what the symbols mean. So when you get them, they're going to come in trays like this. And so this is where I was very overwhelmed because there are so many colors, and again, this is not my realm of expertise, so I was just fumbling around because I just was like, okay, where do I start? So after watching some videos, I found that the best place to start is to swatch your paints. That's the best place, because what you see on the tube and even the paint itself is not gonna look like what it looks like when you put it on paper and when it's wet and then when it's dry. So I set out to do some swatching, and I'll kind of show you how I set that up. One thing I might note, when you get these, this is all you get. So you don't have a paint palette, and these are in a tube. You can squeeze them out on a tube and or squeeze them out of a tube onto, I've seen people do it on a plate. I've seen people do it on just their desk if they've got glass or something on their desk, or if they just have a flat palette. I wanted something where I could close it up and take it with me because so many times I go outside when I'm doing my art. So I had to go and order a palette, and let me show you. So this is a paint palette. I got the biggest one I could find. This is not Arteza, and then I just got this one off of Amazon, and so that gave me a place to put my paints. And that was another reason why I was overwhelmed, is because I didn't understand how to get my paints. And this is not the company's fault. This is not the type of paint's fault. This is operator error. This is showing my inexperience, and I'm learning along the way. So I got a paint palette. This one holds 48, and I have 60 of these tubes, and I'll show you what I did with the leftover ones, and I'll show you how I've gotten a little more, well, I'm gonna say obsessed. I've gotten obsessed with paint palettes, and I'll show you some plans and ideas and things that I've been doing since I made this. The first thing I did was I just took some watercolor paper. This is not Arteza paper. They do sell paper, and there's a lot of videos out there that review the types of paper they have. I did not think to order any of their paper, so I just am using some watercolor paper that I found at a local art store. So there's stamps that you can buy, but I was being cheap. And so I just took, this is the bottom of an ink pad. I pulled the ink pad off because it was dry, and then I just stamped this into a black ink pad, and these became my squares. So you can see I just went through and I stamped my squares, and then I went and I wrote down all the names, and I just did this in pencil. I wrote down all the names of the paints, and I just used the paint name that was on the tube or that was on the box. And once I had that up, this was all blank. Put the color on here and then let it dry. And so this gave me a really good idea of what the colors looked like. Now, this is awesome, and I love this because this is a great reference, and I've used this a couple of times. But then I realized, well, that's not practical because I'm not always going to have these with me. So a lot of things that watercolor artists will do or gouache artists will do is that they will make a swatch for the actual container that their paints are in. So once I did this, then I just cut my paper down to size, and I drew lines. I didn't even stamp it this time. I just drew lines with a pencil, just a regular old pencil right here. And then I did them in the order that they are in my palette. That way, if I'm painting and I want something to match the sky, I can quickly look as a reference and pick out which color is going to be the best match. And then from there, I can dip into the paint, and then over here I can do my mixing to get it to the exact color that I want. So a tip that I saw on the internet, which was awesome, is to cover this with packing tape. So now it's water resistant. Another thing that I did was I flipped it over on the back, and I of course put what the top was because I will constantly get things turned around. And then I said what the name of the paint was. So these were Arteza, and then this is the gouache paints. I also did this for a couple other palettes that I have, and I maybe wrote some notes down, like if I had to double dip into the paints to get them to this opacity, or if I had to, I think another one is I had to spray the whole palette first to get them to activate so that they would look their best. So I would write any little notes or whatever on the back of this, just so I remember. So then now this is all ready to go. So I had this done, I had put all my paints in here, and there are a lot of tutorials out there, guys, to show you how to pour your paints into your little pans here. And you know, this took me a long time. It was fun and it was nice and therapeutic, but it took a long time. That's why I didn't video it. But basically you start in the corner and you pull, you know, you fill it up until you come to the other corner. One thing I did read as I was doing this process is that gouache paints are not necessarily the best for being in a palette, meaning they work better when you pull them straight out of the tube and you don't leave them in a palette like this to dry. So I totally get that. I understand that. And so one of the things that I saw was that they will crack. Now it does not bother me because they're going to be messy and they're going to crack. But what will bother me is if they crack and they start to crumble and then they get mixed in with the other paints. And I did read a lot about people having trouble with not just this brand, but just gouache paints in general, that it's just the properties of the paint that they will crumble. And there's all kinds of different remedies that I read about that you could do, adding glycerin, adding honey, all that good stuff. Again, do your own research. Don't just take my word for it. But here is a quick tip that I found and that I did. Once I poured all my paints in here and they were still wet, I went to my medicine cabinet and I grabbed some gauze, and I just cut this gauze up. This was just some sterile gauze that I had, like for bandages, and I just cut it into squares. And then I went through and I added a piece of gauze to each one of my pans. I just laid it over top. So what that does is it's almost like rebar in concrete. It adds a structure, a mesh, some sort of support, so that when these paints get wet and they get dry again, they will have that mesh, they will have that support that's going to keep it into place. And so then I just kind of pushed them down, and that's when they went to looking messy like this, but that's totally okay. So then I let those dry. Another thing I saw about gouache paint was that they can mold. So this is not a problem I've had. Of course, I haven't had these for very long. So you want to make sure you dry them really, really well before you use them. So I just left it open. Once I put the mesh in, I left them open for a couple of days. And so then yesterday was the first day that I used them. And that's when I did all of my swatching. And that's when I made this. So the mesh was already in there and it worked just fine. All I did was dip my brush in there. You can see the mesh when you get it wet, but it's no big deal because you're still able to pick up the paint. So that was a good tip. And so I just have some mesh, and I've got it in this little tub with all my watercolor supplies. And if I need to pour any more pans, I can do the same thing. There was 60 in this set from Arteza, and I had only 48 places. So what I did was, me being cheap again, I went and I have some old ink pads that, well, they were dry. And so I pulled the ink pad off, and I used the lid, and so the lids then became my little pans, and so then I just poured the paint in. Now what I did was I separated my Artezas into, these were the colors that were not mica based, meaning they were not metallic, and then these right here, these are my metallics. So when I want to use metallics, I can just pull out this palette right here. This, by the way, is just a tin that I had left over from, I don't know what it was. It was just a tin that had a lid, and I didn't want to go spend the money on this palette again. And so I just made my own. And there are a lot of great tutorials on how to make your own DIY paint palettes. I'm actually going to film a video here pretty soon because I've got some supplies and I've got some crazy ideas for filming or for making another paint palette because I'm kind of obsessed with it right now. So anyway, I did the same thing with these guys. Once I poured the paints and they were still wet, I took mesh and I put the mesh or the gauze in here, kind of pushed it down a little bit. You can kind of see that it still has the texture. And then I've let these dry. Now because these were bigger, they've taken a little bit longer to dry. And so the mold thing, I'll just have to watch. And I have not seen any references to mold with the Arteza brand particularly. Like I've just seen in general gouache paint can mold, and so you want to make sure it gets good and dry. So yeah, that's just something I'm going to watch for, and I'll just kind of keep an eye on and see what happens, because this is such a learning process for me, and I'm having so much fun, and I'm very thankful to Arteza for allowing me to do this, because I'll be honest guys, to get these colors, okay, because I'm a color girl, to get all of these colors, and for the price, the quality, it is amazing. And again, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm telling you what works for me. And in my journals, this is an amazing deal. Being able to have this much, because I'm not good at mixing colors. I'm just now learning. So if I want like a hot pink or something, I don't want to spend all the time and energy to try to make a hot pink when I already have one right here. This is a great deal. To me, this is a great deal for a beginner. So if you are interested, definitely check out the link that I have below. You can get, there's a code where you'll get 10% off. And I do want to let you know that because they have contacted me and given me these supplies, I am considered an affiliate of them. And so I will get a percentage of anything you buy if you use that code. But it is at no extra cost to you. It is coming from the actual company. So again, I am in love with these guys. So let me show you what I've done. Once I swatch these, let me show you what I've done to kind of get myself into the whole watercoloring thing. Like how can I put these in my journals? You know I love journals, and well, if it's not in a journal, I just don't feel like it's my art. I love all my art to go into a journal, either before I make the art or after I make the art. It has to be in a journal. That, to me, that's just how my art works. So I made a journal, another one, as if I needed another journal. So this is gonna be a double duty journal here. I took some quilt remnant, okay, and it's very, very simple here. And then I just took some of my watercolor paper and I like folded it and tore it down so that it would fit. And so I think I put like, this is 8 pieces right here. So this was similar to this one right here. And I'm doing this because I'm gonna make another signature for this journal. But anyway, I folded it in half and then I did a pamphlet stitch, 3-hole pamphlet stitch, and put my journal together. I can do this on a video if you are interested. We can set one up. So let me know in the description below. So I'm kind of intimidated about painting in general just because I just don't have that skill set, and I'm working on it, I'm practicing on it, but it's just not there yet. So I can't just sit down and paint a landscape, although that would be really cool, but I'm not there yet. So I needed something where I could jump in, I could use my paints, I could still document and be mindful of my day-to-day life in my journal, because that's very important to me. But I needed somewhere safe to start. So check this out. I took that idea of swatching and I turned it into like a daily swatch, my little journal, if you remember. Okay, so here she is. We haven't seen her in a long time. Holy moly. All right, so let me find, oh, here it is right here. Okay, so it's been a while since I've looked at this. I don't even remember when I did this. Maybe last year, maybe the year before. Okay, so I was driving home from work because I live kind of out in the country. And so when I drive home from work, there's lots of fields and cow pastures and things that I drive by. As I was driving by one day, I was looking at, it's the middle of winter, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so ugly out here. But then I really started to pay attention to the colors. And I started to pull the colors that I saw in the sky and the trees and the ground, the road, the clouds, even the trash on the ground, the leaves on the ground, and I started to pull a little color palette together. And so I came home and I couldn't get that out of my head, and so we did this, and I know I did a video on this, so I'll find it and I will link it below. So this idea has stuck with me because I just loved this. This was so cool. So I wanted to recreate that, but I wanted to recreate it in something much smaller because you can see the little journal is huge. I thought, what if I did that same thing, but I did it on a daily or more consistent basis? So this is going to be my little swatch journal. And so I did this one the other day. So this was the drive home, and I just swatched out what colors I saw. I labeled what they were. I wrote a little bit about it, and then it let me play with my paints. So this was one I did the next day. Did this one a little bit differently because I didn't keep to the square. Yesterday we had a snow day, so I was just kind of like, okay, what can I swatch? I wanted to swatch the outside, but I'll be honest, I was too lazy and I didn't want to get up and go look. So I just kind of was sitting there and I was like, you know what? I love my bedroom. And so I swatched it. Then I stumbled across some of my, the last scrap of my favoriteest wallpaper, some fabric that I love, and so I just made a swatch of this. And here's where I used Arteza. So this was Arteza, and this was Arteza, and you can see they are yummy. Let me zoom in. I have some silk curtains in my bedroom that I love, 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 and I've had them for a really long time, and they're falling apart, but I'm gonna keep using them as long as I can. So I used the metallic on this, and that sheen that it gives, oh my god, that is gorgeous. And then that looks like my wall color. So I really, really love them. So I thought this would be a great way to document things, and it's just a great way to be mindful. I'm trying so hard to be mindful and appreciate everything that I see and that I come in contact with, and just really kind of be present. And so I found myself last night, and it was like 5 o'clock, and we were headed to the grocery store, which is one of the most dismal things in the world for me. And it was just gross. It was icy outside, it was rainy outside, the sun had gone down and it was dark, and I found myself at the stoplight looking for a color palette. And I was like, okay, that's pretty awesome. I'm able to take the darkest, dreariest, grossest part of the day, and I found a really cool palette. So I can barely remember that, but I'm going to try to recreate it. So let's see if we can recreate it here. Okay, so again, you just make up your own rules if you want to do this. I like to just kind of have a square or a rectangle just kind of to hold my colors in, but there are no rules on this. So the main color that I saw was, of course, it's going to be like a black or a gray. And I think what I'm going to do is I think I'll go this way today. So this, let's let this be the sky. Okay. I'm going to have this be the road. And it was wet, and so it was like a dark gray. And so the light was red, but what happened is that I wasn't looking at the light, I was looking at the reflection. And so when it reflected, and because there was ice on the roads, and it was wet, and it was slick, and the sun was where it was in the sky, it became more of like a rose color. So this was the light, the reflection, and then it split off and it reflected again. So this was another reflection. All right, so I had 4. Okay, now I just write these in because I want to kind of map out what I'm going to put where. So I will actually erase these because I don't need those in there, and then I will write what the actual parts are when I go to add all the details. I'll write it down here. Okay, so now I know that I'm going to have 4 places, and so now here goes the swatching. Now I'm going to be honest, this is kind of scary. It scares me a little because I just don't have these skills, and this is hard. I'm not talking about going out and doing a rainbow. Okay, that's easy. I'm talking about taking something that is not typically seen as beautiful. Let me make sure I'm in frame here. Not typically seen as beautiful, and I'm talking about taking time to look at it and pull out the beauty, pull out the colors. So yeah, this is tough, guys. This is tough. All right, so let's start with, I think I'm gonna start with the sky because I'm pretty sure I know what the sky kind of looked like. And so the sky was, make sure I have this the right way. Okay, the sky was gonna be more of this taupey color right here. So, and one thing that you can do when you have a palette like this is you can just spray the whole thing. I am only going to work with a few colors, so I'm not going to spray the whole thing. And my mixing skills and all that good stuff, again, not an expert, just doing the best I can here, just learning. Okay, so it was kind of, I'm going to start with this taupey color, but then there's gonna be some purples. So again, I know you're probably not supposed to mix the paint into the paint, but again, your palette, your paint, you do what you want. And I'm okay if I get my paints mixed a bit. Okay, so this is kind of looking like what it was. And then I almost feel like I need to add some dark into this. So let me go pick up a little bit of black, just a smidge. Get all that off there. Let's see. Okay, this is looking a little bit better. Let me pull some more of this. And again, this takes a long time to learn how to do this, but that's the process. That's the fun. To me, this is why I got these paints. I got these paints because I want this process. I want to see what happens when I mix all these colors together. All right, I'm going to go with this for the sky. And again, I don't have a lot of skill on this. I'm just pushing the paint around. I'm sure there are techniques, and I'll learn more as I go, and the more I practice, the more I watch, I will learn all the tricks of the trade if I want. If not, hey guys, it's not like I'm making $1 million paintings here. This is just fun. This is play. Okay, so I'm cool with that. So that looks like the sky. Now I'm going to take what I already have here and I'm going to go into the road. So the road is going to definitely be darker. So I'm going to add some black. But again, because of the way the light was shining, because of the ice, because of the rain, it was a purpley muted black. So I think this color is going to be perfect. Oh yeah, this looks exactly like what the road looked like. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. Now you can see my top color, I hit a water pocket there. And so it's going to kind of bleed through. I'm okay with that. If you're not, pick up a little black here. If you're not, then you can take a paper towel and you can dab the water pockets. Okay. Yeah, that's working. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now let's do the lights. Okay, so for the lights, it was red. But they weren't red because of the way they were angled and the reflection. So they were gonna be more of a rose color. So I'm gonna go with this over here and let's see if you guys are in. Oh yeah, you are, yay. So let's pull this. And I already have a red started. So I think I'm gonna go over to this red right here. All right, now wouldn't it be cool if stoplights were really this color? But they aren't. But they kind of were last night. Okay, so I'm going to tone this down a little bit. I need to add, I think I'm going to add, I want some light in here because they, well, I'm trying to think here. They kind of were like this. All right, so let me do this. Let me pull some of this pink. There we go. That's it. That's what it was. Okay, so, oh yeah, perfect. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. Now, once I put this in and I spread it out, I realized that this one doesn't look like the first reflection. This is going to look, and there's something in there, so I'm going to pull that off. This looks like more like the second reflection. It was a little bit lighter. So, no big deal. I'm just going to go back to this paint and make it a little bit darker. And I think what I'm going to make it darker with is I'm just going to pull some red. And I'm going to go to this red right here. I think this is crimson red. Yeah, there we go. Pull a little bit of red. Yep, that's it. So this one was the first reflection. So I just flip-flopped it. It's okay, no big deal. So this was the first reflection. And yeah, I love it. And so I was able to take a gross trip to Walmart. No offense, Walmart, but just not where I want to spend my Friday night. Not where I want to spend any night, actually. But hey, at least I was able to go to Walmart. There's a lot of people that can't do that, so I need to be thankful, and I am. But I was able to take this trip, and I was able to sit in traffic. And while I was doing that, this was what I was able to pull, and I love that. And so now, once these dry, I will write the date. I'll write what it was, write a little bit about it, and then yeah, there's my swatch. All right, kiddos, thank you for watching. Again, if you are interested in these lovely paints, check out their website. Check out the links below. And I look for another video for me to show you how I'm going to set up a couple of little DIY paint palettes. I also have some journals coming up here pretty soon. So I hope you guys are healthy. I hope you guys are happy. I hope you do something creative today. And until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye.